You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi, and welcome back to Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. And I'm not doing this deliberately, but this last 3 days, and I think I left you at the Nantahala Outdoor Centre, has been started with an absolute disaster and finished absolutely great. It's been it feels like a complete week since I last spoke to you. But I think it's been a learning experience for me, one that I needed probably to remind me of the importance of making sure I look after my gear. But let's go back to that first morning when the disaster happened within the first mile. And this is day number 17. Day 17, Nantahala Outdoor Centre, mile 136.7 to Sassafras Gap Shelter, mile 143.8. I got up in the morning at the Nantahala Outdoor Centre. Actually, I was at the log cabins up the road, that's right. And I needed some new gear, and I wanted to buy a new fleece and things like that, and some gas and a few food items. And I assumed because hikers are around, people are hiking in and out of that area the whole time, that most of the shops would be open at a reasonable time. Well, the restaurant wasn't open for breakfast, although there was another place we could get breakfast, which was a kind of store. But the outdoor centre itself didn't open until 10 o'clock. So I had to basically kick my heels for a while I waited for it to open. I was kind of dreading the climb uphill. That I remember that hike out of the NOC pretty well. After the fierceness of the downhill the day before, getting out of the place is just as fierce on the way up. So my day was delayed. It wasn't until 10 o'clock when everything opened up, and I went in there and bought a fleece from North Face and a sale for $38, which was a bargain. I got a fleece because I've got this puffy and I've got a base layer. I haven't got a middle layer, and I felt with the weather going in the Smokies eventually, I thought there was a chance I'd need more warmth. So I bought this fleece. I got some gas and a few more food items, so I was ready to go. So I headed out, and within half a mile rather, or 3/4 of a mile, I thought I heard a noise and walked on, and I thought to myself, oh, please make sure my sleeping pad and my tent, which are attached to the outside of my pack, are still there. And I felt and all I could feel was my tent. My sleeping bag was, not my sleeping bag, my air pad was gone. And the air pad is the thing you put your sleeping bag on to make sure you get a reasonably comfortable night's sleep, because you don't want to be directly on the floor, obviously. And I couldn't believe it at first, and I thought maybe it's just fallen off and I'll find it. For 35, 40 minutes, I went back and forward. I took my pack off, went back and forward for about, 250 yards, just looking down the hill, looking where it might have fallen, and I never ever saw it. I was gutted, I tell you. I was very upset, and I was annoyed with myself. It's just stupid to have done that, really. Anyway, I called my wife Diane, and I said to her, could she get REI to send me one to Fontana Dam? There seemed to be no point in looking anymore, but I knew the end of that day, whenever I got to the shelter, I was going to have to be sleeping on the floor of the shelter without a pad if I could get in the shelter. And that was worrying me as well, because I thought the rain was coming. I was expecting it to rain, and people were well ahead of me already. There was a good chance I wasn't going to get in the shelter. Anyway, I passed a guy called Scooch, actually. He passed me and he said, we'll save a place for you in the shelter. Well, I thought there wasn't much chance of that, because when you turn up, if there's one place left, people should take it, really. Anyway, I carried on up. there's a really beautiful plaque partway up about a Carolina firefighter, Wade A. Sutton, who lost his life in 1968 battling the fires in the mountains. And it's really sad, and it was sad to see that this guy everybody seems to make our lives better as hikers and gives us of them to make our day better. And this is a great tribute to this guy. It was on the trail, and it said 700 something feet away from here, he lost his life. And that was 51 years ago. So it was quite touching for me. It was as I said before, it was a very tough climb, but I would have really enjoyed it. I was hiking really well, actually, but the pad really got to me. When you're carrying limited possessions, and they are the backbone, really, of your life on the trail, and one of them goes, you get disproportionately upset about losing them, I guess. And I really was upset that I'd lost it. As I got closer to the shelter, I had two concerns. One was, if the rain started, I'd be soaked, and some of my options for what I could sleep on were going to go. My waterproofs, I was thinking of putting them down, keep my sleeping pad clean. So I was worried about the rain coming, and the second, of course, I really worried that I was going to get a place in the shelter. Well, with less than 1 mile to go, the wind really, really whipped up, and it looked like we were about to be deluged. So I was speeding up as well, and that doesn't really help me. I didn't fall, fortunately. I still haven't fallen. At the shelter, I got there relieved that I was dry, but it was absolutely jam-packed full. And my heart sank, really, because I thought, I'm going to have to set my tent up. It's going to pour with rain in the night. We were due to have a thunderstorm about 11 o'clock that night. And one of the ladies, young ladies, Boomer, called out, "We saved a place for you, Mighty Blue." Oh, my gosh. I could have cried, I tell you. I was so relieved that they'd got a place for me. And someone, I think it was Scooch, had said to them, "This guy's coming up. He hasn't got his pad, so we've got to try to get him a place in the shelter." And they kept me one. And it's another example of how people just pull together in adversity. They were all sympathetic. It was a packed shelter. Normally when people get close in contact with each other, there were conflicts and so on, but everyone was laughing, everyone was having fun, everyone was cooking and getting out of the way of other people while they were cooking. It was terrific. People started giving me things. I was given a Tyvek sheet to keep my sleeping bag clean. That was a great start. Then various people have bought extra little bits of pad they could sit on, so they gave me those as well. So I had some sort of padding underneath, but it was so... I'm a side sleeper, and I could not sleep all night long. I was turning from side to side to side, and my hips were hurting because of it. So it was very, very uncomfortable. So while I loved the fact that everybody pulled together, and I really appreciated it, it was a terrible, terrible night. And I thought to myself, I cannot possibly do this again. I need to get my pad. As I say, Diana sent it on. It was going to be in Fontana Dam the next day. So my plan was to head to Stegoa Gap the next day, get a shuttle into Fontana, stay the night in Fontana, get my pad, and then head back out to Stegoa Gap on the third day and hike in from Stegoa Gap into Fontana Dam. Let's see how that worked out. Day 18, Sassafras Gap Shelter, mile 143.8 to Stegoa Gap, mile 150.6. This could also be titled, "Darn It, I Was Doing So Well." But you'll come to that in a minute. It was, as I said, it was an excruciating night. I was constantly uncomfortable. I was constantly moving about. But funny enough, with a shelter with about 15 people sleeping in it, virtually nobody snored. It was the quietest shelter I think I've ever been in. It was remarkable, really. But I was just having none of it. I was just so uncomfortable. And eventually I got up to have a pee just for something to do, and went back into the shelter. But about 6:15, it was time to get up. And as always happens, I'm so slow in getting out of camp that I was left with two other guys, a guy called Scooch and Paris, two young lads who are, say young lads, one's 28, I think the other one's 31, 32. They're both in an indie rock band, and they were just intelligent, articulate guys. We're having a laugh and have a chat while we were preparing our food and preparing to go. We were the last three there. But I knew what my plan was. I knew it was only a short day. It was going to be about 6 or 7 miles, something like that. And so I was set and ready to go. And eventually, having got out of bed about 6:15, something like that, I left about 9:30. God knows what I've been doing for the last 3 hours. But I say the camaraderie in those shelters, it has to be seen to be believed. And in the show notes, I'm going to put in the picture the one the young lady's Boomer took of a picture of all of us, all laughing and smiling. It was great. Now, there's a climb up, first of all, and that was quite intense, but I was okay. But I noticed straight away it was really muddy and slippery. The downs were really, really dangerous. Once again, I ran into the Malones, that lovely family with the 4 girls. They'd braved the night going past our shelter, going to the top of Chihuahua Bald. Oh, I forgot to tell you, the weather overnight, it had been pouring all night long, yet they'd stayed on the top of Chihuahua Bald with their tents, with the wind blowing, thunder and lightning, and it didn't seem to faze them in the least. The weather actually stopped raining when we got out, and the weather was decent, but it made so much, there'd been so much rain that the mud was, every foot was, every step you took was really sort of fraught with danger. And I was going really well until I slipped on a ledge. And a ledge, I guess, I think I've called them escarpments in the past. These are very, very steep hills, and it's almost a ledge cut into them with some are so steep you can put out your right hand and touch the mountain on the way up, but on the left is a big fall down. So these are ledges. And I slipped once and I pushed my knee into the mountain on the right. So I didn't count that as a fall. However, I really suddenly started struggling with my balance. Not necessarily because of the balance, but because it was so precarious. All this, the way in which you were slipping on virtually every other step and maintaining my balance. But eventually, I fell, and I fell onto all fours because I slipped and tried to. My foot was slipping away from me. I lunged forward, and the weight of the pack took me forward even further, and I fell and ended up on all fours. So, as I did when I did my hike in 2014, I called out, "Number one," got up and carried on. But I didn't carry on for much longer. About 10 minutes later, I went again. This time, and I don't know how this happened actually, I'd just taken my phone from its normal position on my left trouser leg pocket and put it for some reason in my jacket pocket, and I fell hard on a rock and on my left trouser leg pocket where my phone had been literally minutes before. So that was lucky. I carried on down, and the climb down to Smokies Gap seems endless. And I was slipping more and more, and eventually I fell for a third time, ending on my backside, just in the mud, and I was filthy by now. And I got down to the bottom of Smokies, and I didn't really know how I was going to get anywhere, to be honest with you. I knew I was going to Fontana Dam. I booked the room, but they gave me a long-distance shuttle driver, and he came to pick me up 15 minutes later and took me into Fontana Dam. It's funny, at dinner that night, I went down myself, probably earlier than most, and I sat by myself suddenly other hikers were turning up, saying hi, and then they're all sitting together and so on. And I was sitting by myself. I really felt out of place that evening because I shouldn't have been there. It was 16 miles ahead of where I actually was, and I felt not so much a fraud, but just out of place. my emotions on this trip seem to be so heightened that I've got to battle a bit harder to control them a bit more. Everything is so, losing that pad really, really upset me in a way that it really shouldn't have done, but it just did. I was hopeful that when I got my new pad, things would be okay again. But we'll see what happens on day 3. Day 19, Smokies Gap, mile 150.6 to just past the Fontana Dam shelter, mile 165.8, my longest day so far, a 15.2 mile day. An early morning email from RTK, Bruce Matson, suggested that I should talk to a shuttle driver. And as luck would have it, I was being taken back to the trail that day by the guy who'd brought me there the day before. So I headed down for breakfast at 7:30, filled myself up with eggs, bacon and toast and all those good things. And by 8:15, the shuttle was there, and it was a guy who I'd met, as I say, I'd met the day before. Very articulate guy, really nice fella, really took to him straight away. So I thought, well, why not take my chance? And this guy happened to be a guy named Tom, and let's hear what Tom has to say. Okay, one of our listeners suggested it might be a good idea to speak to a shuttle driver, and I could not find a more appropriate shuttle driver to speak with because we share something in common. This is Tom Barrett, or High Loon. Hi Tom, what do we share in common?
Well, we're both members of the class of 2014. We're through hiking the AT.
That's right, yes. So, what was your year like? Did you enjoy it as much as I did?
I did, very much. It was a wonderful experience. I had not backpacked before at all. I had zero experience. I just set forth from the approach trail at Amicalola Falls and crossed my fingers that it would work out, and somehow it did.
5 million steps later?
Yes.
There we were, the guitar. You were just ahead of me, weren't you?
I was 10 days ahead of you, I think, as we spoke. I started March the 12th at Amicalola, March the 13th. I got to Springer, and finished August the 18th.
Yeah, I mean, I never passed anybody, so there's no possibility of passing anybody in front of me. So you're now driving shuttles. Were you living in this area when you did this trail?
I was not. I lived outside Columbus, Ohio at the time. I had very, very recently retired, and now 5 years later, I live in Fontana Dam, North Carolina, among the Smokies and the aspiring through hikers. It's a wonderful life here.
Aspiring through hikers is indeed the word, yeah. So what's the setup here? What do you do? You don't just drive shuttles, do you?
No, my girlfriend is Nancy Hoke, who maybe some of your listeners will have known. She's owned and operated the Hike in Fontana Dam for 26 years. And she started it in 1993 with her husband, Jeff Hoke, who unfortunately is now deceased. Nancy and I are girlfriend and boyfriend, and we live at the Hike In. It's a small mom-and-pop motel, and we run shuttles. We service hikers only. It's a wonderful place.
So what do you find? I mean, one of the things I first noticed when I was hiking the trail, I used to hitch lifts. First thing that a driver would do would lower the window.
Well, no, I hike all the time, and so I smell worse than the guys I'm carrying many times. Not this morning, perhaps, but many times I might arrive with if the weather's nice with the windows a little down, and yeah, there's a bit of a reason for that. But we've run shuttles Nancy has for a long time, and I've gotten very used to the fact that folks are less than
pristine,
wonderfully clean. Absolutely.
Yeah. And are you noticing any differences over the years with hikers, or do you think a hiker's a hiker?
I don't have enough experience at this to answer to that fairly. I didn't hike at all before 2014,
right.
And since then I would say there hasn't been any noticeable change that I've detected. I think hikers are wonderful folks, but they bring a lot of baggage with them to the trail. They arrive at the trail with all their life experiences, and that's one of the wonderful things about the trail.
Sure.
And it's nice being about 165 miles up the trail. We see folks that are struggling to make it. We see folks that are thriving, and it's very wonderful for me to be able to interact with the folks that are having some issues of one type or another. And having been there myself, it's we usually have a great conversation.
And you haven't given up yet either. You're hiking this year, aren't you?
Yes. In 3 weeks, I head out to California to hike the PCT. So wish me luck.
Well, good luck, man.
Thank you.
Hope it goes well. All
I
right,
appreciate
thanks for talking
it.
to us.
Yeah, very, very nice to meet you again, Mighty Blue.
Cheers. What a nice bloke, eh? Really nice. And in fact, we were chatting afterwards. He used to be a lawyer, and he just gave up. He gave up any relationship with owning stuff in life, and having hiked in 2014, he wanted to just live a different life. And he seemed so happy. Really nice fellow. I really liked him. So he dropped me off at Smokies Gap. And I forgot to mention that, of course, because I was coming back to Fontana Dam, I was going to stay once more in the lodge. So I didn't need all the stuff that I had. So I left most of my contents of my pack in my room. So I had a much lighter pack. And what a difference that makes. Now, Jacob's Ladder, which is quite a famous climb on the AT, which I remember from last time being a real lung burster. It's about 10 minutes into the day from Smokies Gap, but my breakfast had really helped and really powered me on. And I actually got up Jacob's Ladder far easier than I ever remember doing before. I seem to recall that someone said that they've introduced a few extra switchbacks to make it easier. I mean, it's intense. It's, but I think, and I learned this a lot from Bruce Matson when talking with him about it, you manage your expectations. I knew what this Jacob's Ladder was going to be like, or what I expected it to be like. And really, it wasn't as difficult as I thought it was going to be. And I got up it relatively quickly. And today was a day of ridges and ledges. Beautiful hike. Really, really enjoyed it. It was far drier. I didn't slip over once at all. There was no rain. It was sunny. And I felt stronger and stronger the further I went. I stopped for regular rests rather, and I ate really, really well. I made sure that I had enough food with me to make sure that, I had the energy when I needed it. Once again, if I was coming to a big climb, I'd stop, glug some water, and take a bar. I'm having a lot of these Cliff bars, and I really enjoy them. And then I've been hiking, I don't know, for about 5 hours in perfect weather on a Saturday morning. I had not seen another soul, not one other soul, for about 5 hours. It was amazing to me. Where can you go in real life, out of your house, and not see anybody for 5 hours? It was a wonderful thing, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I feel like I'm living in the moment here. I'm not thinking allow myself to think too much as the way I did when I first went on this trip. I'm allowing myself to look around and see where I am, and I noticed that I just hadn't seen any. And then, funnily enough, as soon as I thought about it, I passed a guy. He'd set up with a tarp. He was sitting at the top of the mountain, because we were right near I'd just seen Fontana Dam for the very first time. I knew there was still a long way to go, but you get a sight of it very, very early on. And this guy was just set up with a tarp, getting himself some food. We chatted for a couple of moments, and I moved on. And that guy, the shuttle driver, Tom, had told me that there was a grandfather, a father, and the father's 9-year-old son doing a section hike. And I was hoping to have an interview with them, and I thought I'd missed them. But then they turned up. And the 9-year-old son, let me tell you, nice little kid. He wasn't desperately happy to have a chat with me at the time. After we did have our little chat, though, he opened up a bit more. But let's hear what they had to say. Okay, I'm here with another family. I've got a grandfather, a father, and a son and grandson, I guess. Could you introduce yourselves?
I'm Randy Krause, also known as the Wizard.
You're the grandfather, I presume?
Yes. Yeah. Lee Krause, trail name I can't say.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right. What's your name?
My name is Nicholas Krause.
Yeah? And how old are you?
8.
You're 8. How are you enjoying this?
Painful.
Painful.
Painful. So where did you start? Fontana Dam.
Yeah, sure enough.
And you're going to where?
What's it called again? Wester? Yep, Wester.
Wester Board. Yeah, there's
Nantahala Outdoor Center.
Oh, right. Yeah, it's quite a hike. It's so what do you find the best bit about this? Do you hike as a family generally?
We've hiked for going on 15 years, section hiking parts of the AT.
Nice.
I'd say my favorite part were the balds here in North Carolina.
Same here. I love it.
The best ever.
Max Patch and places like that. Oh, it's just extraordinary, isn't it, to see? Just to get up there and see it. I just love it.
I've actually been telling him for about 5 years I want to go back and hike that section again.
Oh, you should do, definitely.
Yeah.
So what have you hiked so far, Nick? Is this your first day hiking?
Well, here.
Yeah.
Yeah, first day.
All right.
First day full hiking on the AT. Yeah.
You look like you got the biggest pack, by the way. Didn't they? Didn't they give you a smaller pack? Or have they filled that with all their food or something?
Yeah, he's acting as the camel right now.
Is he right? Quite right too. So how many miles are you going to be doing then to Wester? How far is that?
Altogether, it's about 30.
Manor-Sea.
Yeah.
Are you going to camp and the whole 9 yards?
Sure enough.
How exciting for you! Well, you're going to enjoy it eventually. Okay, it won't be quite so painful when you get there. All right.
Well, we got some s'mores tonight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'll
buddy.
have them if I feel better.
You'll be all right.
They're s'mores. You're going to feel better. It's okay. Trust me. Trust me. Okay, guys. Well, look, I'm glad I bumped into you because I knew you were on the mountain. I'd love to have a chance to chat to you. Okay, so have a good time. Okay.
Oh, sure enough, we'll do.
All the best. Bye.
All right, happy trails.
He wasn't desperately communicative there, was he? Funny, because he was shy, didn't want to say anything. And as soon as I turned the recording off, he was chatting away. They said, remember, we got s'mores tonight. He said, only if I feel better. It made me laugh, really did. And I bumped into the Malones again, yet again. We seemed to be on almost perfect pace with each other. And I said to the girls that I'd had so many lovely comments from the girls singing the top of Wester Board. I said, maybe we're going to be hiking together around each other most of the time, and I can record you singing at the top of Katahdin. Now, would that be a thing or what? How lovely. But anyway, after I then moved on from the Malones and our new family, I kind of lost a bit of my momentum, and the hike down was a struggle. I'd remembered it from previously when you hike down from towards Fontana Dam. It seems endless. It's always in sight, the dam's in sight, and yet you seem to be going away from it constantly. And there are lots and lots of step downs, and they really jar my knees. But eventually I got to the bottom, and I made an instant decision to carry on to the shelter for a 15-mile day to start, so I could start the Smokies from the dam. That was the best way for me to do it. I rushed straight into it and just carried on and got there. And I felt really glad that I'd done it. I was tired and my legs were pretty unsteady, to be honest with you. And at dinner, I joined a bunch of guys I'd met in the last 3 or 4 days. And a guy called Hey Mitch, great name, he insisted upon buying me dinner. He said, a lot of what I put together for this trip, I learned from listening to you and RTK. And I'd really like to thank you, which was really, really nice of him. We had a great night and I really enjoyed it. But tomorrow, we're going to hit the Smoky Mountains. I'll see you next time.